Jason Wilcox has just given us the clearest look yet at how this new football leadership actually operates. Yes, it was on club media. Yes, there was softer questions than if he'd have sat down with maybe a journalist or one of the fan channels perhaps. But I thought there was enough detail in there to really test against reality. So I'm going to break down, not just that interview, but I'm going to look at the whole sort of, what are they really up to? Because I think this interview is one piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of things coming down the pipe. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of moving parts here between the structure, the recruitment, the narratives, and even the PR play that I think is happening. So this is, what are INEOS really up to here? Now, first things first is the tone, I think, has flipped. For years, we got silence and ignored, or we got Ed Woodward and marketing slogans. Manchester United can do things in the transfer window others can only dream of. Sound. You go and tell everyone that we're only interested in world-class, big money, world record signings, and then wonder why we get our arse handed to us when we go and try and buy a player. Now, we have got visible football voices. Even Sir Jim coming out and managing the expectation in public, coming out and saying you need to judge the manager after 3 years. I thought at the time, I was like, And I actually asked for it about a week before that. I wish they would come out and just say, this is our guy, calm down. And then they did. Barada's been out actually explaining both the culture and the operations. Wilcox gave a short interview last week and then a longer one yesterday, really walking through the processes on camera. That alone would have been different. That alone would have just been completely like separating them from the Glazers. They've come out and set a timeline with this Project 150, which again is ambitious and it might end up looking silly. It probably will end up looking silly, but they've come out and they're not just promising headline signings and they're not just talking about finances. They're talking about football and culture and success on the field. Now, Wilcox laid out in this interview quite joined up flow. The manager defines needs. Wilcox frames the brief. The recruitment runs the market, the data cross-checks the profiles, and before the bids, they do the character and the background work. Thank you. That's all we've ever been looking for. You know, the target profile in the cycle just gone. Premier League ready, plug and play players is what he said. Low adaptation risk, high impact from day one, and a selective development bet with a future keeper. That's not star collecting. That's really good football thinking. And you know, it kind of showed a little bit. It was obvious that even when we were being linked with Martinez, and I thought he was going to say it when I was watching an interview, when he was talking about the goalkeeper and when he was talking about Premier League signings, I thought he was going to be like, yeah, and that's why we were kind of looking at Emiliano Martinez in net, and you're like, But he didn't say it. I was thinking it as he was saying it. But I think it shows some real good thinking. And he talks about culture in specifics, keeping the emotional pendulum still, not getting too high when you win, not getting too low when you lose, regardless of the result of the weekend, which he was like, I thought we were good enough to win, actually. Players are showing up early. People are prepared. Staff are empowered. There's clear accountability. That's what football departments look like when they're working. And it isn't rhetoric. It isn't blowing smoke up people's asses. It's just working. And it'll take time still, because you can have everything working and without getting the results of it. You can be moving the right direction without seeing the clear evidence of it. I think we are starting to see the clear evidence of it. Now, the budget thing was really interesting because, again, very different to what we saw under Woodward and Matt Judge. United would kind of be like, we got loads of dough, and then wonder why we get rinsed for players. We heard all summer that there was limited budget, and they was even putting it out to the press. We don't really have the money to do that. We don't really have the money to do that. PSR, FFP, structures of deals, blah, 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 amortization. And then we just kept signing players, and you're kind of like, I thought we were skint. The amount of times we said over something, this can't be real because we ain't got the money to do that. Now, we didn't go bananas. You know, we kept the prices pretty good value for the players that we managed to bring in. But it still felt like, I thought, aren't we skint? So that's a communications tactic. Publicly under promise, privately execute. It frustrated us and journalists all summer long. But it's a negotiation posture. Use the press to your advantage for the first time in decades. It's such a difference from Woodward coming out there and claiming Manchester United can do things others can dream of, and then failing to negotiate a deal. United, under those two, would be told the price of someone at the start of a window, laugh at it, and then come back 3 months later and pay it. It's pathetic. Now, part of that is for PR. It's fine. But part of that is to save money. And that's fine as well. Now, part of this entire interview is PR. And it's fine. The fact that it was inside Carrington, access inside, it was club media. But it's still a good thing. For the last couple of years, the training ground narrative was out of date, uninspiring. The club responded to that with a genuine refit. They've explained the sports science thinking. They've put senior leadership in the same building as the team. Again, not spin, just selling the project to players that we're trying to recruit. I know for certainty of one player that does now play in the Premier League, who wasn't at the time, that we asked about the link to him and Manchester United. And he said, nah. One of the reasons was because of the narrative that was out there about how Carrington was fucked. The stadium was fucked. United have literally put money into the training ground and flipped the script on that. Cristiano came out and was like, nothing's changed since I left. The pool hasn't been retiled and blah, blah, blah. And again, that narrative wasn't necessarily true. And I remember Rio did a visit maybe a year, 18 months ago at Carrington, something like that. And while he was on that visit, he said he was walking around seeing all these new machines and this, that, and the other. Proper high-tech science stuff. And he went, why aren't you telling people about this? And he was like, don't want to. But it matters. Because if the world thinks Carrington is, a painted version of the Cliff, then players aren't going to want to come. If you tell people you've got the most modern training ground, look at what American college football do. They spend hundreds of millions on their training grounds because that helps them recruit players. Yes, you're paying to play being paid to play for the likes of Manchester United. And it's a little bit different. But you can't tell me that there's not an element of your ground, your fan base, your training ground, your manager, like that players don't want to come and sign for those and for those reasons. You have to sell the club, the project. And what we saw under the Glazers and Woodward was just idiocy. People would slag the club off and they'd say nothing. Well, they're not necessarily clapping back here, but they're putting narratives out that can't be ignored. And it was the same with the stadium talk, the Wembley of the North concept. It was a signal that United intend to be the destination again. How are we going to pay for it? Fuck knows. When's it going to happen? Fuck knows. Do we even own the land around the ground? Nope. Don't worry about that. But we put out this amazing stadium, got loads of people involved, sold the dream. United are on the up again. Look, we've got this new gaff, this training grounds, do blah, blah. Like, it's all part of the vibe around the place. Now, sponsors get re-energized to come and get in the mix. Players go, I wouldn't mind being part of that, It's a message as much to fans as it is to recruiting players. But it changes the mood around the place. But none of this matters if we finish 15th again. How do we separate things from PR? Well, there's a few ways. One is you can look at the recruitment. Windows should match the profile of what they're telling us it should. Good characters. This summer looks like it was a good window. Last summer looks like it was a good window. On the recruitment front, at least, anyway. So we want to see another window or two. There will be mistakes. Statistically, there's going to be some of these that we feel like are successful now that probably turn out not to be. But it feels like we've signed some real good players. It does. So we can be allowed a mistake or two over the next couple of windows. But if they're more in the, he's pretty good in column, than the tosser, waste of space, waste of money kind of column, flop column, then I think we'll be doing okay. On the pitch control, though, they said the gap was creativity and goals. So they bought goals and creativity. The next part that they need is control and defensive transitions. So we need signings that are like that. You know, this might be where the Elliot Anderson link comes in, if that's who we're going for. But, you know, that's the sort of thing I would expect to see in the next windows, is players that fit the things that we're missing at the moment. And then the consistency of mood. You know, if Carrington really isn't living in the week-to-week drama that the press would have you believe, then performances now should stabilise, even if the headlines don't. So big picture is, and I like this, it's a football-first posture. Clear roles, manager, director of football, recruitment head, CEO, all visible, all accountable, all coming out, even the owner in Sir Jim, all coming out and saying, I'm responsible for this and here's what I think. And I like it. Less bragging about our power in the market, less bragging about how many retweets we can get on our social posts, more talk about process, character, and football. It can be called brand safe. It can be called PR. It can be called fluff. I call it overdue. So I think Wilcox and co, and like I said, I heard this in the summer anyway from staff. Obviously, you get quite close to different staff members on a tour, both football departments and the more commercial kind of departments. And this is a big one, is that, you know, Wilcox was going around as the director of football, doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the commercial side of stuff, but was going around and talking to people. And that's really the people who were telling me, fucking hell, he's impressive him. You know, they're taking control, not just of the football club, but the story around the football club. And it's not just for talk and for PR reasons. They're actually getting their hands dirty and doing it. You know, they're showing you the training ground. They're talking you through the tough decisions. They're setting lofty targets no one asked them to set. And that's where the accountability comes in. You know, it isn't necessarily about winning press conferences and having nice things written about you. It's about making sure that those words end up matching the decisions, and those decisions end up leading towards success, because that's where the football can compound it. Chaos into calm won't be, you know, the catchphrase. It'll be the new normal. So let me know in the comments. Do you have a good vibe about this? Is it an actual joined up plan, or is this just good PR? And actually, is it even a bad thing if it is? But yeah, I'm pretty positive about the things that they've done so far. And I can't wait to see where it goes from here, because it was never going to happen in 1 year. But it started all right, I think. Let me know in the comments. See you in a bit. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.